Hello, I'm Bill Serban, Director of the Center for Advancing Teaching and Learning at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. This presentation explores ways to improve students' academic performance by using brief social psychological interventions. In this series, I will examine three interventions: values affirmation, social belonging, and causal attributions. These are brief exercises that target students' thoughts, feelings, and beliefs in and about school, but do not teach academic content. They are intended to help students deal with common psychological barriers that undermine achievement. As you will see, these brief interventions can have a big effect on short and long-term academic achievement. This is part one of the series and focuses on values affirmation. Before looking at interventions, let's talk about problems and start by examining stereotype threat, a widely documented obstacle to achievement. Stereotype threat is apprehension and distress about the possibility that one might confirm a negative stereotype about one's group. For example, a widely held social stereotype is that females have poor quantitative ability and are less capable in such fields as mathematics and engineering. Stereotype threat is likely to be triggered in situations where females must demonstrate their quantitative skills. If this happens, negatively stereotyped individuals experience anxiety, distraction, and worry that interferes with their performance. Rather than concentrate solely on the task at hand, the student is distracted by thoughts related to failure, thoughts about confirming the stereotype that women are poor at math, and other task-irrelevant ideas. Dozens of research studies have documented the negative effects of stereotype threat with many different groups of students. Anyone can experience stereotype threat, regardless of one's level of confidence or ability. A good example is a study with high-achieving students at Stanford and the University of Texas. Two groups of highly competent white males were asked to take a difficult test to determine their math abilities. The researchers added a stereotype threat to one of the groups by telling them that the reason for doing the research was to determine why Asians seem to perform better on these tests. To quote from one of the authors of the study, "In this condition, these test takers stumbled on the test. Pressured by the stereotype of Asian mathematical superiority, they solved significantly fewer problems on the test and felt less confident about their performance." These students were highly competent and confident males. Most of them were mathematics majors, and most of them had earned near-perfect scores on the math portion of the SAT. Stereotype threat is a pervasive obstacle to achievement. What can we do to counteract its effects? One approach is to confront the stereotype explicitly. Some instructors and academic programs try to convince females that the negative stereotype is not valid and that they are just as capable of succeeding as males. Yet even when women do not accept the negative stereotype, they may still underperform due to anxiety associated with confirming the stereotype. Social psychologists have been successful with a completely different approach called values affirmation. In 2010, researchers at the University of Colorado used a values affirmation intervention to boost the performance of women in introductory physics. The intervention was brief and simple. In the first week of class, they asked students to do a 15-minute writing exercise. Students were given a list of 12 values, such as being good at art, creativity, relationships with family and friends, independence, and so forth. They were asked to select one or two values most important to them and write about why they viewed these as important values. Students did this exercise a second time just before the first major exam in the course. That's it. The entire intervention took 30 minutes, 15 minutes at the start of the course and another 15 minutes a few weeks later. Note that none of the values in the writing exercise had anything to do with physics or science ability. To evaluate the effectiveness of the intervention, researchers examined students' composite test scores and their scores on a nationally standardized test. Here's what they found. This graph shows the difference between males and females in the control group was about 10 points. In the values affirmation group, the difference shrinks to about 2 points. These are composite scores of all the exams in the course. This graph shows the scores on a nationally standardized physics test, which students took at the end of the course. In the control group, males scored about 10 points higher on average than females. In the values affirmation group, females' scores were equivalent to males. The difference for females was quite large, increasing from the low 60s in the control group to the mid 70s in the intervention group. Why does values affirmation improve performance? One explanation is that people experience distress when their sense of self is threatened. People are motivated to protect their view of themselves as good, moral, and competent. But reminding people, via values affirmation, for example, of diverse positive aspects of themselves can lead people to see negative events as less threatening, reduce stress, and help people function more effectively. So values affirmation diffuses the anxiety associated with specific negative effects. Values affirmation is a tool instructors can use to reduce achievement gaps and differences between students. Keep in mind that it is not a cure-all for low achievement and that it is likely to be most effective with students who experience stereotype threat. Remember that its intended effect is to remove psychological barriers so that students can perform closer to their potential. I would recommend that instructors use a value affirmation intervention that has already been used successfully. Be careful to follow the protocol, or you may undermine its effectiveness. Another important point is that self-affirmation does not work as well when participants are told that the point is to boost their self-worth. Affirmation is more effective when students are not viewed when it's not viewed by students as an intervention intended to help them. Although a lot of research has been done, we don't know how well an intervention may work in all circumstances. So it may be up to you to carefully apply an intervention to a new context. And 2 last points, words of warning. Social psychological interventions are not likely to be effective in an overtly hostile environment. They remove psychological barriers in normal environments, but they can't reduce the kinds of threats that students experience when a program or the environment is openly hostile towards them. And finally, social psychological interventions do not trump bad instruction. Values affirmation won't enable students to overcome the negative effects of bad teaching. If you're interested in viewing the references as well as additional print materials associated with values affirmation, visit this website, Exploring How Students Learn.